Thank you everybody for joining us today. It's kind of a casual day, really, but looking at a topic that came up on the JAM board was about representation in your different in your digital environments, and how can you get more representation? How can you get underrepresented communities? How can you work it into your strategic goals, or what steps has anybody taken to really work at really making their collections more inclusive and diversifying them? So there is no set thing, but I thought maybe it'd start off with, has anybody done an analysis on their collections to help them, or what steps have you started to figure out how can I go about really with creating a much more getting the underrepresented, creating much more inclusion in your collections? Has anybody done it, been successful? If not, ideas on how you're how you're thinking about going about doing it?
I'll jump in, although I'm eating
Sure.
my lunch, so I'm
Thank
off camera.
Yep, that's
um,
fine.
I mean, just with digital collections, with our primary source materials, we've always had a project proposal form, and we actually added some questions to it to try to encourage people to think about if they're representing something that, yeah, an underrepresented group. But we already have had to try to revise the wording of it, because the very first proposal that came in that version, was for a bunch of houses, pictures of a bunch of houses, and really focused on the diversity of how this photo collection of a bunch of houses, covered a neighborhood that hadn't been covered by other photo collections of houses. So, we really, we're struggling to even word it in a way where people understand. We're saying we're trying to bring
Yeah.
out, underrepresented stories and people. And then on the flip side, well, not really the flip side, but another digital collection of ours is our institutional repository. And there's been an initiative called The Collective, and I'll drop a link to that, trying
Perfect.
to
Yeah.
highlight BPOC faculty and staff's research, and to get it more cited, etc. It's really cool, but it also is very underutilized. And in fact, my colleague is going to be presenting at the Library Publishing Coalition conference in a couple of weeks about it, but also about how it's not been a wild success. We're trying to bring visibility to it, and yet if you build it, they don't necessarily come. So
Yeah. But no, I think that's really a great idea, with especially with the faculty, getting their research out there much more. That's a new, I hadn't thought about doing it that way. I see, this is why I like these things.
well, we need help about how to make it more successful.
Yeah, but true. But I like the concept is there, and it's a good one.
Thanks.
I think too, when you mentioned about terminology, we've been having a lot of those discussions I would say within South Carolina as a whole. We can't use diversity anymore in committee names or anything. And so it's been interesting conversations about the changing of the terminology, but is it changing the work? And, things like what type of terminology can we use? So looking at what impact tech area, I think it's called impact technology or terminology. Um, so it's been, yeah, I mean, we've had those issues about how can we even build these collections when we're coming up against that, and how can we really get the support we need to do that type of work when that's kind of the mindset lately. And I said that as this is being recorded. But oh well. Other ideas and things that people have been doing to really start ideas that have worked, or things that you've been doing to help with, making really looking at trying to get your collections expanded. Has anybody done certain, like, I'm going to say, pilot projects with a certain community to try to do proof of concept with anything?
maybe not like a pilot with specific communities.
Mhm.
But I'm the coordinator for the Michigan Digital Preservation Network. And part of our IMLS grant to fund the hardware to create our network
Mhm.
also included a sub-granting opportunity for underrepresented or at-risk digital collections. So that we can target those organizations that have the biggest need for digital preservation and offer them one-on-one training in how to use the MDPN. And the sub-granting, the money actually goes towards free and subsidized storage for those collections.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yep. And I think that's great going within the community. Because they're, that's where they're going to know what to be collect, and to then to be able to offer that service of storage is wonderful.
Yeah, it's getting those small and under-resourced
Mhm.
organizations interested in
Yep.
doing digital preservation has been a really heavy lift in Michigan. And so giving them that sort of bonus, or that, right, like that sweetening the deal for them, saying, hey, this is free storage for your collections. Like, please just, participate in our training and use our service. And like, we'll help you every step of the way. But, we just want to get these collections safe and
Yep.
under preservation. So.
Other examples? I'm sorry, it's quite interesting doing this from a rest stop. I've got quite the interesting little semis coming through right now. Um, but how have you worked with your administration on gaining support? Resistance or acceptance pretty quick, or what type of tactics have you had to use to get that support?
The support for digital preservation in general.
In general, or even trying to, when you want to expand and look at with the underrepresented communities. So either both, because yeah, I mean, trying to get the support in general, yeah, is difficult also sometimes.
Sorry, I came in a couple of minutes late.
It's okay.
Yeah, I will just say that for any collections right now, our institution seems to to understand the value of having it as a service point in general, but communicating that it's a resource intensive area that's only going to grow over time and never going to come down has been a real challenge to say, like, this is the price tag this year and it's going to be higher next year.
Yeah, that is so true. That's where I kind of counter with, we're making sure that what we're not collecting, we're making sure that what we're putting in there is going to have that long-term value. So that's why we need people on the appraisal side before it goes in. In general, stories of, success or not so successful, but you had a great learning experience and getting higher administration or just administration to help with building the collections. How has it been trying to get within the different communities? Um, like I think it was Chelsea mentioned, how they're working in Michigan. Sometimes was it hard to get your foot in the door with the various communities? Because I mean, here, uh, basically in South Carolina, it's always been a matter of trust with the communities. We had unfortunately, a campus that did not allow African Americans even in until 1963, in which then very much the African American community feels like the university itself is unsupportive of their community. And so, you know, how have you found ways to get with it? How have you found ways to build that trust for them to say, let's work on this? Because I mean, a lot of it is I'm saying I want to collaborate. I don't want to take your stuff. But then it gets a little bit sensitive too on the storage and the access to it. And so I think it goes back to during that collecting phases, how do you build that trust? What type of things have you done?
So we are not really at the point yet in our grant where we're reaching out directly to communities. There, we have been
Mhm.
talking to some sort of ahead of time who have reached out to us specifically looking for digital preservation help, right? To say, right,
Yeah.
we will have down the line this granting opportunity for you to participate in. Honestly, we are relying on we have really close relationship with a lot of different statewide partners. And so we're hoping that the deep network that we have in Michigan will help amplify the message of, right, the sort of benefits that come with the program, but also because maybe the ask isn't coming from us, right, it's coming from another trusted colleague or an organization that's a sort of known to small and under-resourced organizations, that it'll be uh, an easier negotiation.
Yeah.
I'll also say that we are not a university, right?
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
I think helps,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
true.
I'm located, or my staff position is funded through a public library nonprofit, like consulting organization, that people don't have any strong opinions about one way or the other. And so, that's been really helpful as well, just how, and that was a very intentional choice by the people who set up the Michigan Digital Preservation Network, right? We had 3 university partners who all wanted the MDPN to be at their university, and it ultimately was decided that that would not do MDPN any favors.
Very good point there. Yeah.
Yeah.
From a place when our digital libraries is DPL, it's within 3 universities, so it went that route. Has it been more when people are looking at, I guess I'm going back to that, building that trust or working within the different communities. Um, I mean, I like the idea of that you kind of set the program up and hopefully you find, somebody, I want to say an ambassador for you that can bring the communities in to help with that relationship. Ideas. This kind of flips it. Have you discovered within your institutions, if you do have collections that have been collected previously and you're looking at digitizing them, what considerations have you had there on their privacy or certain issues that can happen when they're not expecting it to be digitized?
I'll jump in here.
Mhm.
So I work for a religious archive.
Mhm.
And as such, all of our material is created from the religious community. And they were involved in some healthcare institutions. So they founded hospitals in areas near Native American communities. And so we were digitizing photographs from this hospital, and you're already having a whole bunch of privacy concerns about, did these patients consent to having their photographs taken? And so our general call was to only share material that was public domain. But even within that, well, ordinarily we don't have concerns about sharing images that are public domain because the people that are in them probably no longer alive, not a major concern. However, because it is such a small, tight-knit community, there were concerns that the people in the photographs, that their children would not consent to having these images shared. And so the call that we made was to err on the side of caution and to just not share these images publicly for anything that even had a slight concern about privacy.
Did you talk with the community? Because that's one of the things that we had a collection here, and it was like, oh, we need to get that out. It needs to be up. And it was just like, no, we need to build a relationship with the community before we do that. Because I did not want them to be surprised that their grandmother's, like oral history was all of a sudden available for anybody to look at. So, just trying to figure out, like you're saying, I mean, we've got to bring those considerations into play, even though technically on some of the stuff, we own the stuff and we have every right to do it. That doesn't mean that we should do it.
Yeah, so we actually had an intern who was from that community, and she was the one who raised the concerns to us because we were, sort of stuck in the mindset of it is better to get this stuff shared. But she brought to light that that can sometimes do more harm than good. So
yeah. Yeah.
In a past job, not the institution I currently work for, when we were adding something that, as you say, we had every right to put online, but we were making an effort to reach out to the people who were represented in the images and recordings. It was interesting because the pushback kind of, when there was, some people were delighted, but there were others who seemed to be resentful because somehow they thought we were making money from it. I mean, which I guess, in one sense, those of us who were employed, whose job it was to work on it, I mean, we were, but as part of lots of other things. But it was very difficult to kind of get over that. Like, no, this is like, we're making it freely available online so other people can appreciate and enjoy this as well. It's not, we're not reselling, it was just pretty awkward. And I think that actually, this was a very long time ago, but I do think that at least one family opted out of being included in the digital collection.
The best experience I had when contacting the families, they didn't know that the grandmother had done it, and they were delighted to be able to hear her voice.
Yeah, that was what we were expecting. That was, that was the desired outcome of that process, and not the you're exploiting us for your own gain. Like, no.
Yeah. Understand that. I had lots of those where it was like, you come in and you do their research and you take and you never give back anything to us. And it was just like, oh, I understand.
I also wonder if this goes back to like a question about how we educate different publics about what an archive is and what the purpose of it is, and sort of demystifying what the archive is and what we do as archivists. I was just at the University of Michigan's School of Information student exposition, and there was a group that had made a sort of like guide to using an archive, right? And how an archive is different from a public library and how it's different from a museum for the Washtenaw County Black Historical Resources Consortium. And it was, I think, one of the better, more accessible and understanding guides out there, right? Just to approach the subject of you might not know what this is, but you also deserve to be here and to access this. And so here is how you do it.
Interesting. And it's great to see what's happening in the library schools these days.
Yeah, and I think, right, I often feel like we don't do a good job, or maybe we think it's not our job to sort of educate the public about what we do. But maybe it should be, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should be doing more outreach into our different and varied communities to say, hey, this is what we do. This is how the process by which you can come here and look at things. And right, we're open to you. We are for you.
Yeah. That's a very good statement. We are for you, because I think that's what a lot of the communities, they think we're not.
Right.
And it is. I think that's really great, taking it that step. Oh, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm getting a lot of good ideas today. So thank you.
I come from a public history background rather than I'm like a secret, not real digital preservationist.
But I think a lot of it is how to interact and how to, and it's some of it too, to me, is that I think I was with a couple of, it was just not colleagues, but it was people in different community groups, and I was talking to them, and I had coffee with them, and it was just like, I'm coming here with a blank slate. It's like, I I want to know how you perceive us, and how can we work together, and what are roadblocks that I'm not seeing, kind of. And I wanted to get a better understanding from their perspective of how the archives was actually being perceived, and to try just to get a better understanding, and to be able to just work, I don't want to say work better, but work more intelligently. So I've been driving a lot, so my words, I'm not so coherent today, but other thoughts that have come to mind, we kind of talked a little bit from all different kind of aspects. So um just in general, thoughts that you're having on this.
We're doing, as I'm sure many of you are, we're undergoing a reparative description project. Trying to change how we describe people. And I have a success this week. I had contacted TGM to make note of a couple of their terms that seemed problematic, and that actually other controlled vocabulary sources had already changed, namely slave quarters and what was the other one? Mental institutions. They actually say psychiatric hospitals, see mental institutions, and I said, well, that's been flipped elsewhere. Anyway, they're changing them. Probably not till the end of the month will they show up in TGM, but no more mental institutions. It will be psychiatric hospitals, and slave quarters is enslaved people's dwellings.
Yeah, that is wonderful.
So, and they're open to, people catching other things in their vocabulary. So yeah, the subject terms are just a drop in the bucket. There's our descriptions, our titles, especially if the title came from the original creator, as well as, just archival silences, period, which is how we started this discussion. But, there's so much work to do, but it feels good when there's a little bit of progress in part of it.
And they're open to it. That's what I was just thinking. Sometimes they sit there and it's like, oh, I really hate this term and blah, 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 And it's just like, just be proactive,
On that proactive note, I actually have a question. Are folks adding, for lack of a better term, like content warnings to your descriptions? And how are you including that?
Yes, we have a blanket statement on an about page on the digital collections website that probably nobody ever reads. But then in the records of things that are, I mean, we have blackface entertainers, things that are just obviously problematic. I've been adding a sentence about how we don't condone the representation or the language used, but it did happen. It was. I mean, I can find the exact words if you want, but and find an example where I'm. So I'm putting that where even though I will have changed the subject term and various terms in the description to more neutral terms, and it will have that that content warning. Where I'm struggling, where I haven't decided what to do yet, is when we have things. I mean, I've mentioned mental institutions. I mean, there are a whole lot of institutions that were in this part of the world, that used really offensive terms in the actual name of the institution when it was operating as such. And, so it is a picture, or sometimes it's a postcard and those words are printed on it. So even though I can change to, psychiatric hospitals as a subject term, and I can rewrite a description, the fact remains that it was called the Lakeside Asylum for the Insane, at one point in time. And I don't know if I need to warn about that. I mean, even though the description is sort of neutrally written to talk about the name changes over the years, but I can't erase the fact that it had an offensive name at one point. But I don't know if I need to warn people like, hey, we know this is offensive, or just assume that it's implied by the fact that the name has changed. You know what I mean? I don't know how far to go with some of the content warnings.
I appreciate that, Rachel. That's some really great insight for me, because I'm just starting to look at potentially adding such warnings to some of our descriptions. For example, one of our collections is from a medical professor from the early 1900s, and we have some photographs of medical students with cadavers not being treated very respectfully. And so right now we just have a note in the scope and content that these photographs exist, but I'm looking at if we should do something more to make people aware that this material exists in this collection, but I don't want to sensationalize it, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I think the best part is you're actually thinking about it instead of just saying, oh, let's just do it. So being very thoughtful about it. The other places have, the warning statements. We do a warning, like Rachel mentioned, a general warning statement, and then with various descriptions, if we think it needs to have a warning put on the individual, then we do on the individual description, then we do that also. Thoughts from others on this? Other questions, concerns that individuals have?
I'm sure I'm not breaking any new ground here by elevating this resource, but for folks who are interested in an example of a harmful language statement that I recommend to people who ask me questions about how to make one. The where is it? The Black Women's Suffrage site of the DPLA has a really thoughtful, harmful language statement that then also has a series of frequently asked questions. that they really dive into, like, where does this content come from? Why does this content exist, right? Why are some of these terms used? And so I think it's one of the better statements out there because it does sort of educate the public about the archival process and the like sort of history making process. It right sort of like pulls the curtain back and says these are like the problems that we're dealing with, and we're dealing with them as best as we can.
Yeah.
So I'll drop it in the chat just in case anyone hasn't seen it,
Perfect.
but it's
No.
really wonderful.
Thank you. This is what's great. Thank you. And I think John shared their statement. Also, you put a link in the chat too. You know, it's great that we can share, and because I mean, it's not like we all have to create unique statements. I think we can really learn from each other and how other people have developed their statements. So. Other thoughts? If not, I was going to say we've had a good half-hour discussion, and I think I've come away with a lot of different things, and from my unique place of where I'm at for the meeting today. For those of you joined late, I'm at a rest stop in the middle of Iowa, so it's been an interesting place to be able to meet.
Brenda, this goes to show you can have a Zoom meeting anywhere.
Anywhere.
I'm sorry I haven't contributed much to this discussion. It's not in my field of experience, so it's been good listening to other people's interesting comments and remarks.
But at least your connection held, so I'm happy about that part.
Yeah, and the lights are back on, so.
Gian's in you're in South Africa, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes. Our
Every
council decided to work on electricity tonight. For those who don't know, it's 6:30 in the evening here, so yeah.
I think every so often when we want to meet, it'll be like, oh, we're doing rolling blackouts right now, so we switch our
Yeah.
times around a little bit.
So sorry.
I think it's sad the rolling blackouts have to happen, but we figure it out. At least you get a warning. I always hated it when, especially in the summertime when it's like, oh, too much electricity. So they just, you lose your air conditioning at the point you need it the most.
Yeah, we have a very interesting civil service here, which is started by a group of people that actually looks at all the schedules for rolling blackouts, and you can buy your area or your suburb get notification of when your blackouts will happen, so you can plan ahead, and that really does help a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well, great. Any last comments from anybody?
Just a random
Yep.
info share because you pointed to the Jamboard. Did other
Yep.
people know that that's going away? Google is.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got I think there's three different types of we can migrate it to. So
Okay.
yeah, at one point it was supposed to be going away, I thought in June, but now they say it's not till December. But I figure we'll be migrating that very shortly.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have ideas on which of the what people are comfortable with using?
I don't know. That's the one that so many of these have used.
Yep.
So I was surprised to hear it was going away because it seems like it gets a lot of usage.
Yeah, but no, there's 3 different products that they're recommending. There's 3 different ones. And so, yeah, that's going to be happening very shortly. Yep. But I was surprised too that Jamboard was going away because I thought it was very popular. So
Yeah.
who knows? Alrighty, it's a Thursday and we can all start the weekend early right now. How does that sound?
Yeah. And the
But
recording for this will be up on the notes soon. The link for the recording for those who want to go and listen to the opinions
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
insights.
But thank you everyone for joining us today. And I don't have I don't have the calendar up in front of me. I can't remember what group goes next month, but we do quarterly from the various interest groups with infrastructure and see, this is really bad. I don't have another computer screen to have all this up, but the next month it'll be one of those. And you know, NDSA, the all listserv, usually the messages get sent out, but I hope you can join one of their content or their interest group meetings too, and continue to share.
Yeah, it seems it's going to be the NDSA Infrastructure Interest Group that meets on the 17th.
Okay, perfect.
There we go.
All right. Well, everybody have a great Thursday and a great weekend, and see you next month or in 3 months.